not the person that's making it. You'll be in control. It says the knowledge of image making eliminates competition from your life. Think about this. Professionals create, amateurs compete. Professionals create, amateurs compete. The whole idea here is a simple one. In conflict, you have two choices. You have a choice to defend yourself, or you have a choice to learn in the conflict. If you make the choice to defend yourself, you're going to try to protect yourself. If you protect yourself, you're going to blame someone. And if you blame someone, you're going to miss all the joy that could be yours. But if you take the attitude to learn, you're going to make it. One last statement, and then I want to bring Bob back on. The Spanish distiller at the bottom of the page, just draw a circle around it, because you see you're either a prisoner in the underground den or you're on the surface enjoying all the greatness, all the goodness, and all the joy that is your birthright. The good life then is expensive. There's another way to live that doesn't cost much, but it isn't any good. It isn't any good. So let's get the all level of energy up again and bring on Robert.
I got it. Thank you, John. On page 22 in your action planner, I want to suggest that you take the chapter on the image maker and read it over a couple of times. Not once, read it over 2 or 3 times. I have found that as we read things over, they start to take on a different meaning. I read somewhere in a book where it said, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. So as we go through this chapter a couple of times, we'll start to relate to it a little different. Now, I want to suggest that at the end of this particular lesson, you sit down with the new understanding that you have from the information we've already covered, and stop and ask yourself, what areas of my life would I really like to change? Take a look at some of the results you're getting at the bottom of page 22 and list some of the results you'd like to change. Now, at the top of page 23 is a quote that come out of Maxwell Maltz's classic Psycho-Cybernetics. Psyche being Greek for mind, cybernetics being the science of control and communication in our marvelous mind. Now, Maltz said, we act, we behave, and feel. Now think of what we're talking about here. We act, we behave, and we feel. The vibration that we're in most of the time, according to what we consider our self-image to be. And we do not deviate from that pattern. This is the one stumbling block that many people have. You're going to hear from a man in a few minutes that made a phenomenal change just through understanding this one idea. And I'm going to tell you, the man was brilliant when he got the idea. It was just one small change. This could be the one you want to make. Now, Maltz explained that the image you hold of yourself is a premise, a base, or a foundation. It's nothing but an idea in your mind upon which your entire personality is built. He concluded this image not only controls your behavior, yet controls your circumstance as well. Now, it would take a respectable understanding to grasp that. How could an idea in our mind literally change the circumstances in our life? Well, by the time you finish this seminar, the various subjects in it, you're going to know exactly how those circumstances can change. It'll be very clear to you. But I can assure you, you alter this image in your mind that John was talking about. You take this idea of what you want to be and learn how to plant it in here and release this idea. Like that, your life will change. And you're going to hear from someone who made a big change. Now, let's take a look at this idea of cybernetics. Do you know, a number of years ago, many years ago, I bought this book. It was out around 1960, and it was shortly after that I got it. And like most of these books I get, I read it over and over and over again. Now, let me digress for a second. I was in a seminar that Dr. Harry Roeder was conducting. And I'm going to tell you, this man is brilliant. He has an enormous amount of information of why we do what we do. And I remember we were working with a loose leaf exercise book. It was in Chicago that I was in the seminar, although Dr. Roeder is a Canadian. And he said something that really sunk in, and on the first page in the book, I wrote it. He said, you do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand it. Now run that through your computer a couple of times. You do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand it. Now that was written in a book a long time ago. I wrote it as Harry said it. I'd read this book before that. And I read it off and on every year or two. I'll read it a couple of times. Someone came up to me in a seminar one day years ago, and they said, Bob, do you know what cybernetics means? And I said, yeah. They said, well, what does it mean? I said, well, it's, and all I could see was the front page of that book where Dr. Roeder said, you do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand. And I didn't know how to explain it. Now, this chapter, or this paragraph on page 23 is right out of this book. I went and got the book out again, and I started to study it. And I got some other books on cybernetics, some real heavy stuff, and I started to study it. Now, let's read it. Cybernetics is a science of control and communication in the animal and in some machines. It is based on the fact that both biological organisms and some machines have sensors that measure deviation from a set goal. These sensors signal feedback into a coordinating mechanism, your nervous system, which corrects the output or the behavior of those same organisms or machines. Now, if you're reading a page and you go spinning past that paragraph, I think you'll have to admit it'd be pretty easy not to understand what you've just read. Now, you just read, in fact, I read it to you and you probably followed me. You might ask yourself, could you really explain that to someone? Well, I obviously couldn't. That's why it's so essential that we listen to this over and over again. A couple of us were talking at the break, and this gentleman just come back. He came back, he'd just been through the seminar, he came back through it again. And he says, it's so much different. And I said, every time you go through it, it's different. I said, that's because you're operating with a higher awareness, and you'll see things you weren't able to see before. Now, turn over onto page 24. This page could be worth its weight in gold along with the other two pages. Let's let this circle that you see at the top of the page, you're at the top of page 24, let that represent a thermostat in your home. And we take this thermostat and we set the dial to control the room temperature at 72 degrees. That is the set goal. Now, what they say? It says it has a sensor in it to measure deviation from a set goal. It signals this deviation into a coordinating mechanism which then corrects the output. Let's suppose the room temperature is at 72 degrees. Someone leaves the front door open and it's cold. You're in the northern part of North America and the temperature drops quickly to 68 degrees. The sensor in the thermostat picks up that deviation. It sends a message through the electrical system in the house to the furnace. The fire's turned on, the fan's turned on, until that room temperature is brought back under control again at 72, then it cuts out. Let's look at it in another machine. We'll say this is an airplane. Well, that wasn't nice. I'll bet you couldn't draw it any better. It's quite obvious I haven't majored in art. Like the guy said he majored in the minors. All right. Now, this airplane, let's suppose it leaves Pearson International Airport in Toronto, and it's going to LAX or Los Angeles in California. When the pilot leaves the vicinity of the international airport here in Toronto, the pilot sets a cybernetic mechanism. That's called an automatic pilot. Then you see the guy with the 4 stripes wandering down the plane, and how are you today, sir? You having a nice trip? Enjoying yourself, ma'am? I used to sit there and I think, why doesn't he get back in that room up front? I didn't feel particularly comfortable screaming through the sky at that height, and the guy that's in charge of the ship wandering around, you know, inquiring as to the state of my health. But I would feel much healthier if I didn't see you wandering around this plane. But it didn't make any difference. He could have come back and sat with us. That plane was under control. It had an automatic pilot, a cybernetic mechanism. Now, let's suppose that airplane got hit with some unexpected turbulence, and bang, it got knocked off course. The automatic pilot would pick up the deviation from the set goal. If it didn't, this thing might end up somewhere down around Juarez, Mexico. It signals a message through the electrical system in the airplane. The wings are changed. The engine thrust is changed, and that plane is brought right back under control again. Now come down and take a look at these two people on page 24. We'll just draw one. This person has an image in their mind. I'll use a concept that we could all relate to. Let's suppose this person's a salesperson or they're a student. You could use either one. Let's suppose the salesperson sells $1 million worth of their product or service every year. Do you know large sales organizations can pretty well tell you what their sales force is going to write at the beginning of the year? If they have a contest and they send them off to some exotic place on a trip for writing so much business, and they name where they're going to go today and they're not going to go for a year, do you know that they can book the seats on the plane now? They know exactly how many rooms that they're going to rent. That's because people very rarely deviate from their set objective. They're locked into a habit pattern. Well, we could switch this, and let's say it's a student that gets a C average. Now, this salesperson may get a real pep talk in a sales meeting or something. No understanding, just motivation, no education. They get all wound up, and they go out, and in a week, they write $350,000 worth of business. Their self-image picks up the deviation from the set goal, sends it into a coordinating mechanism, the nervous system. A signal is sent, and the behavioral patterns will change, and that person will quit selling until they're back on course again. Now, they may go through a period where they write nothing for a month. Self-image picks up that information, sends a message through the nervous system, the behavioral patterns will change, they'll get up and they'll start selling again. But at the end of the year, they still have written $1 million worth of business. Let's suppose it's a student that's getting a C average. They bring the report card home, parents turn the heat up, turn the TV off, bicycle goes, girlfriends, boyfriends are out of the picture. Really put the pressure on the kid, the marks shoot up, and they get 100% on a test. Self-image picks up that information, sends a message to the nervous system, the behavioral patterns will change, and pretty soon that child's back on course again. What's causing the problem? It's this image in here. That's what it is. That's not what they want to be, but that's what they are. At the bottom of the page, that drawing. On page 25, results in control of you, you in control of results. If you were to look in your Born Rich book on page 62, there's a story of a man that I am very proud to call my friend, and John's friend as well. This man started into the insurance business in the southern part of the United States 38 years ago. He had just left college. He was 23 years old. He worked as an agent, a salesperson, for 3 years. Then he moved into management. He held a number of management positions. As a matter of fact, he became the vice president of sales for the states of Kansas, Missouri, Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. John and I both did a lot of work for him in that area. And I'm going to tell you, he is a good man. There is just absolutely no question about it. And he is well-liked and respected. Big difference in the two, both of them. This man today decided that he wanted to quit traveling and he wanted to move back to his roots. I often ask people in the seminar, how many of you are living in the house you choose to live in? I don't very often get many hands up. This man would be able to hold his hand up because I've been in that house. I've slept there, I've eaten there on a number of occasions. And I'm going to tell you, it's one of the nicest houses I've ever been in. But it's a little more than a house. It's a real comfortable home. It really is. And you feel welcome when you walk into that place. The energy in there is just incredible. He's got a just an absolutely beautiful wife, Tip. She is really a grand gal. I mean, she is something special. He's not only busy in the sales field, he's got 5 children and 19 grandchildren. You'd almost think the guy was 150, wouldn't you? This beautiful house he owns, he not only sells, he gets involved in some physical labor. It's way back in off the road. And I'm going to tell you, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's got its own little lake. He decided to brick the driveway. And he was going to put them all in himself. Now, not being too fond of manual labor, I took a look at what he was starting, and I thought, the poor guy's got to need a psychiatrist. You know, I asked him this morning or last night, how many bricks did you lay there? And he said, 55,000. Give you an idea how long the driveway is. It's all his property. He wasn't bricking somebody else's driveway. Some of you will really appreciate the significance of this, and some of you may not. This man lives in a town of 17,000 people, where the average income is below the national poverty level. In spite of that, he has the largest agency in the Prudential Insurance Company of America. He has 60 agents and 8 managers. Now, this is absolutely phenomenal. He operates one of the largest, he operates the largest agency, and certainly one of the most successful. He's a man that really believes in what he does. Now, a lot of people do. I've met his children. And Janie, his daughter, is the mother of 3 beautiful little kids. She works in the same company Paul works in. She's an agent too. And Joe, his son-in-law, he's an agent in the same company that Paul's in. I like it when I see a person bringing their own family into the same business they're in. It speaks well of what they think of their business. I think of all the things I could say about this man. He's a man of integrity, and you are more than fortunate in meeting him. Believe me, you really are. He's a very special friend of mine and John's, and I phoned him just a little over a week ago, and I said, you know, I've got an idea that it would really add something to this program, because there will be millions of people watching this all over the world. Within a couple of months, this particular seminar that you're sitting in will be on the market in New Zealand, Australia, in England, and in every city in North America. I wanted those people to know this man. But even more than that, I wanted them to hear from the person themselves how a man took the idea on this page and like that, put it to work, and the difference it made in his life. And I'm going to tell you something. You could not consider him a loser when he got this idea by any stretch of the imagination. He's a very special guy. I want you to stand up and really give this man a warm welcome. It's Paul Hutsey from Pittsburgh, Kansas.
As I pause to think about what sets most men apart, it seems to me that goals in life is a place to start. Imagine playing football on an unmarked field of green. Not a goal line to be sought, not a goal post to be seen. It would be an aimless battle with nothing to be gained, without a thing to strive for, not a score to be obtained. We must have purpose in our lives for the flame that warms the soul. Every man must have purpose. Every man must have a goal. The question is, why are you here today? Well, I think you're here today because you want more of the good life. Right, Nino? And that's the way I was in August of 1975 when I came to this great city, when our company had a conference here. And on the last day, they were introducing the speaker, and they were telling what an outstanding personality he was, and that he was going to speak for 3 hours in a row without a break. And I leaned over to the guy next to me and I said, I wish this guy good luck in his next job because he's on his way out of this one. I couldn't imagine anybody talking for 3 hours. And then this red-headed guy ran up on this stage and started jumping up and down. And as he began to talk, why, he talked about different ideas. He talked about the way you think. And he talked about the great law. And he talked about the picture of your mind. And as he talked, well, there came a hush over the crowd, and he really mesmerized people for 3 hours. Now, I've heard a lot of speakers, but this man kind of charged me up. And when it was over, I said to him, could you and I have a cup of coffee together? And without a minute hesitation, Heather, he said, yeah. Now, one of the great things about Bob Proctor is that he's a great giver. And sometimes people give you 2 or 3 minutes. But we went off and we sat down and we talked for a long time. And I said to him, you know, some of the things that you said today kind of turned me on. I don't see myself as a loser. And I'm considered to be a good manager. One of the bright ones, they tell me, in the company today. They say I'm a motivator, I'm a good speaker, but things never really seem to happen in my life. Why is that? The things that you're talking about. And he says, I can see very clearly what's wrong with you, and it will only take me a boot. A boot? It will only take me a boot 15 minutes to straighten you up. So he talked for a while. He said, looky, I'm coming to Kansas. This is August. He said, I'm coming to Kansas in October to do some seminars for your company. I'll see you then. I didn't want to wait till October. I said, I want to know about this now. He said, I'm traveling Indiana and Illinois next week. If you want to come with me, come on. So for a whole week, I traveled with him. And there was 8 parts of that seminar, and we did 4 of them that week. And then at night when everybody else went to home, well, he did the other 4 with me. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how those ideas impacted my life and the lives of people around me and that I've been able to impact. Because I began to see possibilities. I began to see doors instead of walls. That was October when he came to Kansas. My agency at that time was about 180 in a company, and in 2 months we went to 72. And then later that year, why, I was transferred to another district. That district had not won a citation in the company for 8 years, one of Prudential's highest awards. When I got there, we were 163. The first year, using these ideas we're talking about right now, we finished 11 in the company out of 500. And then 9, and then 4. And then 80 and 81, we were the #1 agency in the company in first-year commissions, and that's the name of the game. Everybody understands that. First-year commissions is the name of the game. And we did that in a town of 17,000 people, as he said. But I've come to understand that it's not where you are that counts, but who you are, Tammy. Now, what's the difference? What was the difference between the Paul Hutsey then and the Paul Hutsey later? Well, I've come to understand this, that there's very little difference in most people. But that little bit of difference is the way you think. And that makes a big difference. You know, William James, a great philosopher, one time said that the greatest discovery of our century is that you can change your life by changing the way you think. So from a practical point of view, from somebody that's on the street like I am, let me tell you about how these ideas that Bob talks about might impact your life and the things that they might do for you. I do some public speaking, do some seminars for companies. I've developed some of my own ideas, laws that I call on, that I share with other people. And let me share some of those with you. First of all, let me talk to you about the law of repetition. And I'm going to go through this real quickly. But I think it's the number of times that you try something that's really going to make the big difference in your life. You see, the reason why you need to read your books and your tapes very often is because of repetition, spaced repetition. It is the number of times. That's why the video that we're doing right now is so important for you to have. Just think about having Bob Proctor in your house every day. I promise you that if you would take 15 minutes a day and listen to one part of this tape, you will be an expert on that part. But what happens while you're doing this is that you develop a habit. And that's what happens when you develop ideas long. You develop a habit that you couldn't break that habit if you wanted to. I could not harbor a negative thought if I wanted to. I'll give you a great classic example of that. Helen Keller is one of all the great time people. She one time coined a phrase that says, every time a door closes, another one opens. But some people concentrate on the door that's closed so much that they never see the door that's open. Now, when you practice these ideas, then I'm saying that you always get a chance to see the door that's open. Now, this time he has said so many times today, it's been said so many times today, that if you practice these ideas, and this is a quote that came directly out of Think and Grow Rich, if you practice these ideas long enough, riches will come your way so fast you don't know where they're coming from. Now, if you have a big goal in life, if there's something big that you want to achieve, then there's a decision that you're going to have to make right away. What are you willing to give or give up to have what you want? You see, nature's greatest law is the law of cause and effect. Emerson calls this the law of laws. The great law that says you can't take more out of life than what you put into it. No way that can happen. Now, why is it then that we don't achieve big goals? Even more so, why don't we set big goals? Why is that? Well, you know why. It's a universal reason. Fear. Fear of failure is the reason why most people don't try to do things. What if I try and fail? What if he asks me a question and I can't answer? I don't know how it is right now, but when I was a young kid and we had a school dance, why, the girls all stood on that side of the wall, you know, and the guys stood on this side of the wall, and Esther was the cutest girl and the best dancer in school, and I really wanted to dance with her. But I was afraid to walk across there and ask her to dance, and she might say, oh, you got pimples, you know, and then I'd have to walk back and all the guys would laugh at me, see, and so I didn't get what I wanted because I was afraid to try. Now, let me tell you how you overcome the fear of failure. You overcome the fear of failure by having a goal that's worth failing for. That may be the most important thing I say to you all day long, is having a goal that's worth failing for, worth taking a chance. You see, I've come to understand that failure is a very positive part of your life. Is that you cannot have failure without success. And that you cannot have success without failure. It's both sides of a coin. So, I think about these things. And when I talk about having a goal that's worth failing for, I'm talking about having a big goal, Tammy. Something that excites you, something that turns on. You see, there's really two kinds of goals. There's logical goals and emotional goals, John. Logical goals are reasonable. You do those for intelligent reasons. I tell salesmen who have logical goals, you're going to raise skinny kids. Confucius said, man, shoot at nothing, sure to hit it. What I'm saying to you in your life, your goals have to be emotional. They have to be something that makes you feel great when you achieve them. See, there's intangible goals and tangible ones. The tangible one is the car, the house, the boat. But you don't want the car or the house or the money. What you want is the way it makes you feel. And that's a great understanding. That's why you have to have the emotional goals, because of the way it makes you feel. Now, when you have a big goal in your life, an intangible goal, emotional goal, then you are going to have conflict. You are going to have adversity. You are going to have circumstances. This may be the most important thing I will say to you today, is that there'll never be a circumstance on the outside of you that will ever help you or hurt you. It's what's on the inside that counts. So as you reach out for something big, why then you're going to have conflict, you're going to have adversity, and that's when the greatest law, and you've heard it talked about today, the greatest power you have comes into being. That's the power to choose. That is your greatest power. I talk about that so much that I think that pretty much the sum of your life right now is the sum of the choices that you've made. And that if you want something better out of life, it may be just as simple as changing some of the choices. But let me tell you, when you want a bigger bite out of life, then you're going to have adversity. And I'm saying it's not adversity, but the way you act to adversity. Personal example. Bob talked about the house. I've always had a dream when I was a little kid. I always wanted a house that set on 10 acres just outside of town. Set up on a hill with a lot of trees, a red barn on it, and a couple of lakes, and a winding driveway. I always had that idea. And when I came back from the home office back to Pittsburgh, I said, this is the time to start doing what you wanted to do. And so I started looking for 10 acres just outside of town. And guess what? There wasn't any 10 acres outside of town. Everybody else wanted 10 acres outside of town. And if I wanted 10 acres, I had to go about 10 miles outside of town. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted 10 acres outside of town. And because I couldn't find 10 acres just outside of town, guess what I did? I started looking for 10 acres inside town. And guess what? I found two. I found 2 lots, 10 acres inside town. I found them because that's what I was looking for. So if you go down to 510 South Georgia right now, well, you'll kind of drive into the trees, and then when you get there, well, it just pops up at you. It's an 800-foot driveway that snakes down through there, and the red barn is there, and the 2 lakes are there. There's trees all over the place. You see, those things were there all the time. Those 10 acres, I live closer to City Hall than 2/3 of the people in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And guess how much I had to pay for that? A lot of money, right? I had to pay very little because the guy didn't think it was worth anything. Because he didn't have the vision that I had of that. My point is that you pretty much get what you're looking for. Now let me give you a side story that goes with that. That really ties into this whole seminar and the things that we're talking about right now. More of the good life. 10 acres is a lot to mow. 10 acres is a lot to mow. So I'm cutting my grass, and there's the people that their acreage bumps up right next to ours, and they had a horse. And I'm over there cutting. The woman saws me. We haven't met each other. She comes running across, I get off the tractor, walked over to her, leaned on the fence. It was hot. It was wired. She said, oh, we should disconnect that. She said, you know, when we first got the horse, he used to lean up against that fence and it would break it down, so we wired it, and then once we wired it, why, he wouldn't even get anywhere near it. So we tacked and left, and the next day, I'm going to work. The front of their property dead ends into a street that comes back from my office. These people both work. I come home at 11:30. There's the horse loose in the front yard. I thought the horse was loose, but they had taken a single strand of baling wire, tacked it onto the house, over to this tree, over to that tree, back to this house right there, and inside was the horse. Now that horse could jump over it, crawl under it, tear it down, but he stays there all the time. How come? Because he thinks that wire is hot. He is fenced in, right? My question, how many of us are fenced in? How many of us are a slave to the past? How many of us are not doing things that we really would like to do because of the past? You see, I think choosing is important, and I'll tell you, I think a very important statement is that getting in life is not difficult, but deciding what you want. Getting what you want in life ain't tough, but deciding what you want, choosing what you want is tough. Let me talk to you about just a simple idea that I think involves with, and now we get around to the point that you want to talk about here. Self. You need to be an expert as a self-starter. Self-motivated. Self-control. But most important, self-esteem. Self-image. You know, Bob's always talking about this. But the result I was getting over here was the same as the picture I had in here. And when I changed the picture in here, the result over here changed. And the same thing can happen to you. Anybody in this room. Let me tell you why. Because God only made one just like you. He made you in his own image and likeness. He made you just like him, and part of him's in part of you, and that means you're a winner. You're one of God's ideas. Isn't that great to know that? That you're one of God's ideas. Bob used to tell a story when he first came to Pittsburgh. Now, I don't know whether he even remembers this. But he talks about a great sculptor who hauled out a piece of granite, and he began chipping away. And every day a little guy come to see him work. And after several weeks, while he was finished, and the great sculptor stood back to take a look at what he had done. And he said and it was a body of a great, beautiful Greek god. And he said to the little guy, he said, well, what do you think about that? The little guy waited for a minute and said, mister, how'd you know that guy was in there? Well, I'm saying that guy was in there all the time. You're a Mona Lisa. What makes a Mona Lisa so valuable? What's rare? Just one of a kind. And you're just one of a kind. But it's how you see you that makes a difference. How does the quote go? The me I see is the me I'll be. In Robert Schuller's latest book, Failure is Never Fatal, Success is Never Final, he tells a story about a small kid playing baseball by himself in the backyard, and he said, I'm the world's greatest baseball player. He throw that ball up and swing at it, missed it. I'm the world's greatest baseball player, threw it up again, missed it. I'm the world's greatest baseball player, threw it up, missed it, strike three. He said, wow, what a pitcher I am. Let me tell you that you hold the picture of what you really want, and it's just a matter of time. The ancient Chinese proverb says, the longest journey begins with a single step. I say that beginning is half done, and that you need to start right now. And one of the reasons why I like Bob Proctor and his ideas is that I think that he's a great giver. And this is just a side dimension from what we're talking about, but sometimes people ask me, you know, why I wear that number 2 pin. And I got the number 2 pin from Bob Proctor a long time ago because he cares about people. I wear the number 2 pin to always constantly remind me to always put the other guy first. You always put the other guy first, and he'll always put you first. And a great guy one time said that the first shall come last, and the last shall come first. And I'm convinced that the ideas that Bob has got is great. But he practices his idea. He cares. He doesn't do this because of money. He does this because of feeling. And his feeling is that if you get a picture of what you really want, then it's just a matter of time until you have it. So let me wrap this up, Bob, and just with a quote that came right out of the book that he's talking about right now of James Allen. And this is what the whole seminar is about right now, where it says, the vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build by your life, and this you will become. It's really been nice to come and be with you in Toronto again. It's my personal pleasure. Bob, and thanks for having me, friend.
Hey! You know, I've shared Paul's story with countless thousands of people, but it was really nice to be able to share Paul with the people today, and with all the people that are going to be watching this in their homes and in their offices all over the place. Paul talked about the self that you have here is what's going to determine what you're going to be. John talked about I never noticed the difference in that, Paul, but I always found the Americans crucified our language. At any rate. And I guess the Canadians crucified the English language. But at any rate, you have an image here in your subconscious mind. Now, the first step in changing that picture is in your exercise book, your action planner on page 26. So often, as Paul mentioned to me, for 22 years, every year he promised he was going to get one of those citations, but he said, I never got it. Emerson said, of what use to make heroic vows of amendment if the same old lawbreaker is going to keep them? You see, Paul was trying to get that citation with the same old picture. And the only thing I suggested to Paul, and it didn't take long, was how to change the picture. And I said, you change the picture, Paul, and I said, your results will change so fast, you'll be shocked. Now, this never happens by accident. You've got to put forth a little effort. Remember how John started out? He said you put a little in, you get a little out. Some people put a little in, but they put a lot of energy behind it. They still get a little back. If you put a whole lot into it, you'll get a whole lot back. Now, what I want to suggest, as this lesson comes to an end, I want to suggest that you go someplace quiet, by yourself, and think. I mean, really think. Life is precious. There's absolutely no question about it. I think that there's enough evidence, just in what we've covered in this seminar, to indicate to you that you can have, do, or be the things you want. It was no accident that Paul got that house. It's no accident that he runs the largest agency in all of the United States of America, in the world, with that company. And in a town of only 17,000 people, where the average income is below the national poverty level. That's no accident. That's how Paul sees his people operating. And as a result, everyone benefits. Not just the people in his agency, but all the people they serve. Now, we're suggesting here that you make a written description of the person you're about to become. Now, that's not going to make you that person. We're going to get into how to take that image and turn it over in the next lesson. But I want to suggest that you sit down and you really think. Realize this power is flowing into you. As it flows in, we said it just is. It's without form. You make it what you want. And I'm suggesting that you build into your mind a picture of exactly how you want to live. Don't give any thought to how it's going to happen. We're not at that point yet. One step at a time. What kind of a person do you want to be? Where do you want to be in your commercial career? What kind of a financial position do you want to be in? I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty. When Paul got this idea, he was already winning. When John and I got it, we were miserable losers. And I know that if I can do it, anyone can do it. I've gone into prisons with this, and so has John. We've worked with people who are right down and out, the castaways. And we've watched them literally change their life just through these simple concepts. And so can you. But you've got to decide, how do you want to change it? You don't get the house by wishing. You decide, what kind of house do you want? Now, don't just build a picture of being a wealthy person. When Ray Stanford first suggested I could change, that's all I was interested in. And I got it. Howard Hughes did too. But he ended up alone and lonely and in a very defiled body. Now, build an image of being happy, of being healthy, and of being wealthy. And I would suggest that you build into it the kind of an attitude that you want for everyone else, what you want for yourself. And your life will be absolutely incredible. Now, all you have to do is build this picture in your mind. And when this lesson's over, I'm going to suggest you go somewhere quiet and do that. Don't put it off. Do it. Don't wait till tomorrow, next week, next month, 5 years from now. Waste all that time. You do it before you go to bed today. Sit down, take your pen, and right here on page 26, describe exactly how you want to live. And when we get into the next lesson, we're going to show you how to firmly plant that image into this part of your mind, and I'll guarantee you, you'll change. And you'll change fast. Now, you just heard from a gentleman from Pittsburgh, Kansas. He's flown all the way up here just to share that with you, that it does work for him. Now think. He tried for 22 years. You can tell by looking at him he's a good man. For 22 years, he tried to get what he wanted, and he couldn't do it. You'll never do it through force. You'll do it through faith and by law. And we're going to show you how to put it in there tomorrow.
You'll have to admit, Paul Huntsey sure changed the direction of his life and that of all his family with the proper image. He was something else, wasn't he? Well, we're at the halfway point now. I might suggest that before you even go any further, you might want to go back and review all of this material. It's so important to you and your life. Now focus on your goal. Sit back and really think, what do I really want? Like Paul, it might be that dream house.